everyone, me again. This is part 2 of the No Calculator quiz review. Again, I thought I'd just kind of work through it so you can get an idea of my thought process when working through one of these problems. This has a lot of these kind of fractions raised to a fraction power. So I might start to go kind of quickly because they're all sort of the same deal, but I want to make sure you have the opportunity to get questions answered. So with this first one, 16 to the 3/2 power. I always take these problems with these more complex fractions and separate them. So I would write this as 16 to the 1/2 and then with a power of 3 on the outside. Well, 16 to the 1/2 is equal to 4. So then I have 4 to the 3rd power. 4 to the 3rd power is 64. If you weren't sure about that, you certainly could multiply it out by hand. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. That's it. That's your answer for that one. Okay, 8 to the negative 2/3. Again, I would separate this. I would make it 8 to the 1/3. And then with a 2 out here. And then with a negative 1 up here. Okay, because when I put all those pieces back together, I get my negative 2/3. And each one of those things kind of works differently as you're working with it as an exponent. So 8 to the 1/3 power is 2, because 2 to the 3rd is 8. Okay, so I get 2. Now I'm raising to the power of 2, and then a negative 1. Well, 2 to the power of 2 is 4 to the negative 1. And then remember that negative 1 flips it and makes it a reciprocal, so this is going to be 1 over 4. Okay? All right, so when I go to number 3, I'm going to work the same way, except everything I do has to be done to the top and to the bottom. So I'm going to have 8 over 27 to the power of 1/3, and then to the power of 2 on the outside. So 1/3 and then 2. So really what I'm doing here, and I don't know that you would really need to write this out separately, but I'm doing 8 to the 1/3 over 27 to the 1/3, and then squaring both of those. So 8 to the 1/3 is 2. 27 to the 1/3. Remember, you want to be thinking about what to the 3rd power would give me 27. That's a 3. And then raise that to the power of 2. Remember, that means that you're raising this and this to the power of 2, so that would end up being a 4 over 9. Okay. So then for that next one, I would make this 25 over 16 to the 1/2, and then to the 3rd, and then to the negative 1 power. Okay, so separate out all of those pieces. 25 to the 1/2 is equal to 5. Remember, that's really doing a square root. And then 16 to the 1/2 is equal to 4. And then I've got that to the power of 3, and then to the power of negative 1. Okay, 5 to the 3rd power is 125. Again, you could do that by hand if you wanted. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 is 125. And then 4 to the 3rd power is 64 to the power of negative 1. Now, up here, when we had 4 to the negative 1, we just made it 1 over 4 because 4 is a whole number. But here, this is already written as a fraction. So I just want to take my fraction and flip it over and make it 64 over 125. Okay? So number 5. Now, this is an example of one, and I hope this doesn't confuse you. If it does, ignore number 5. But not that it's hard to do the way it's written right now. But knowing that this is 1 over 125 and that I'm going to have to flip it eventually, this one might be easier to actually flip first. It doesn't actually matter what order I put these exponents in. I usually just start with the roots because that tends to make my numbers smaller before I raise them to a power. If I really wanted to do 25 to the 3rd power first and then try to take a square root of it, I could, and it would get me to the same place. It would just be bigger numbers to work with, and without a calculator, that's kind of tough. But this one, I think I'll actually do this with. I'll do 1 over 125 I'm going to do the negative 1 power first because that's going to let me flip this over. and then I'm going to raise to the power of 1/3. Okay? And again, if you did the 1/3 power first and then flipped it, that's totally fine too. Okay? That would kind of go in line with all these other ones that I've done. So this 1 over 125 to the -1 is going to flip over and just become a 125. That's why I did that, is to make that a nice happy whole number. So then it's just 125 to the 1/3. If you knew back here that 5 to the 3rd is 125, then here you should know 125 to the 1/3 is equal to 5. And there's your final answer. Okay. Number 6, I think this exact same one was on the other side. What I'm really asking myself here is 3 to what power would give me 1 over 27? Okay? Well, I know that 3 to the 3rd power gives me just a regular 27. To make it a 1 over 27, I'm going to need a negative exponent. So 3 to the -3rd power is equal to 1 over 27. That means my answer is -3. Okay, this right here is where my answer came from. Okay, so I'm asking myself, what power would I need to turn this into this? So now let's look at number 7. There's one similar to number 7 on that front side. Number 7 is saying 4 to what power equals 8? It's not 2, okay? 4 squared is not 8. To do one like this one, I'm going to need to write both of these in a similar base. And actually, that's what I did back here too, is I wrote 27 as 3 to the 3rd power, okay? You just maybe didn't think of it that way. But 4 and 8 can both be written as powers of 2. I'm going to go ahead and use an x here on this one, just so I have an equation to work with. So if I write 4 as a power of 2, that's 2 squared, and then I'm going to throw my x in there, so I'm going to put an x on my 2 there. Again, what I really did there was 4 is 2 squared, and then raised to the power of x. And then I can just combine my 2x, which I'll do in a second. 8 can be written as a power of 2. Also, it can be written as 2 to the power of 3. Let me just clean this up. It now says 2 to the 2x equals 2 to the 3. That means 2x has to equal 3. And if I'm solving for x, 2x equals 3, divide by 2 on each side, and x equals 1.5. Okay, or 3/2. Okay, number 8, that's a base of 10. So what I'm really saying is 10 to what power gives me 100? That's an easy one. 10 to the 2nd power equals 100. So my answer is 2. Okay, this one is another one similar to the one on the front, where if I'm doing the log with the same base on both sides, I can just drop the logs off of there. And I end up with 3b plus 2 equals 2b. And then I'm just going to solve like an equation. Okay? So I would subtract 3b from each side. So I end up with 2 equals -1b. Divide by -1 on each side, and I get a -2 for my b value. And that's my final answer. And then the last one, slide this down here a little bit, move this up so you can see it. I am asking 5 to what power gives me 1 over 125? Well, that's really, I know that 5 to the 3rd power gives me 125. And so to make it be a reciprocal, I need a negative power. So 5 to the -3rd power equals 1 over 125, which means my answer is -3. Okay? So that one went pretty quickly. If you do have more questions on that, please feel free to leave a comment or email or ask in class tomorrow. But that was really representative of what you're going to see on your quiz tomorrow.